In the last section, we spent a little bit of time to just look at the new application we're going to build and generate a new React Native project. In this section, we're going to spend some time learning more about Redux. And when I say Redux, I mean just Redux. We're not going to talk about React Native. We're not going to talk about React. We're focusing solely on Redux. That's all. So because we're only focusing on Redux, but we still want to be able to write some code, we're going to be using a really interesting little tool to just kind of experiment with some Redux code. I'm going to open up my web browser and then navigate to Stephen Greider, that's my name, .github.io/JS Playgrounds. Make sure that J, S, and P are all capitalized in here as well. And once I go there, I should see a nice screen pop up here. On the left-hand side, I can enter in some amount of JavaScript. So I'm going to say like const pi is 3.14. And then if I print out any variable that can be printed out, it'll be automatically displayed on the left-hand side, or excuse me, on the right-hand side. So if I display pi or 2 times pi, I get 3.14 and 6.28. I can put any type of JavaScript in here. And let's say I'll do some string concatenation. So any type of JavaScript plus pi yields the statement, any type of JavaScript 3.14. And what's really interesting about this tool is I can change any value I want on the fly, and I automatically see the result recalculated on the right as well. Lastly, if I make any typo in here, so I'm just going to make a little typo like so, I'll get a note on the bottom right hand side that says, hey, you made a little bit of a mistake right here, go and fix it. So again, we're just using this tool to get some very live, very dynamic feedback on the Redux code that we're going to be writing here. Okay, so we're using this tool to learn about Redux. This tool is not required for Redux. It's just a place where we can mess around a little bit. So let's change gears now and talk a little bit more about Redux. This is a diagram of exactly how Redux works. And we don't really have any context on what's going on here at all. Let me lead this off by saying right now, crystal clear, plain as day, Redux has a lot of fancy terminology, but it is all language that obscures or obstructs otherwise straightforward concepts. So I don't know about you, but I've heard just tons and tons of people say, when they're talking about Redux, they say, oh, Redux is so simple. It's amazingly simple. Well, yeah, of course it's simple when you understand the confusing terminology. And so that's our goal. We want to master the confusing terminology and put plain English definitions to all the different parts of the library. Okay? So with that in mind, I have 4 words on the screen right now. Store, action, reducer, and state. 4 words. I want to put a plain English definition to each of these words right here. So here's my plain English definition for each of these words. And I'm going to be repeating these definitions over and over and over through the next couple of sections. Now, I know that you can, read from the screen here, but I'm going to walk through the definitions anyways because I need something to say when I'm recording a video. Let's start off first with this one in the middle, very center, the reducer. This is probably the best example in Redux of something with a name that is just too complicated, just way too complicated. So here's my plain English definition. A reducer is a function that produces some amount of data. That's it. That's all it is. It is a function that produces some amount of data. Next, an action. An action is a plain JavaScript object. And when I say plain JavaScript object, I'm talking about curly braces, like an object. That's it. It is a plain JavaScript object that tells the reducer how to modify its data. Okay? The action only has one requirement. It must have a type property. And we're going to discuss more about that in a minute. Again, I'm just trying to get these words in your head right now, just the very vague general concepts in your head. Next, on the far right hand, state. State is our application's data. Everything from the value of each input field to knowing whether or not there is a user currently authenticated, to a list of data, to a series of pictures to show in the app, all of the data inside of our application puts together our state. So it's just the data that our application is using. Finally, the store. The store is what holds the reducers and the application state. And when I say holds, I mean like just literally it has a reference to the reducer and the state. If Redux was its own like kind of like standalone object or its library that you want to import and use, it would be most closely analogous to the store right here. So you can kind of think of when I say Redux, when I say like, okay, Redux has some data for us, or Redux, we want to update the data that's sitting inside of Redux, I'm referring to the store. So just keep that in mind. All right, so let's see a little bit of an example of all these terminologies in practice. So this is all the same terminology. So here's an action, a reducer, and state. Here's a store. And let's walk through this example here as I've written it out. Using Redux, we're going to use Redux to make a tiny application which will take a string of characters, basically a word, and split it into an array. Okay, so that's our goal. I want to use Redux that will take a string of characters and split it into an array of characters. To do so, we will first start off with an action. The action is going to be a plain JavaScript object that says, here is a list of string of characters, like a word. I want it to be split up. So it contains two things. The action contains two things: a string of characters and a direction, like a command, an instruction that says, I want this thing to be split up into characters. We're going to take that action and pass it into the reducer. The action, when it goes into the reducer will look at the action and it will say, aha, this action is commanding me to split up these characters. It wants me to split up all these characters into an array of single characters. So it's going to take the action's string of characters, like the word, and it's going to split it into a list of characters. The reducer will then return that list of characters, like that array. Because the reducer returned that array of characters, like that data, our state is now going to consist of an array of characters, like this ASDF. Okay, so again, this is just like one very simple, one very straightforward process. So we are going to create an action that has some string of characters, like ASDF, and it's going to contain some command or some instruction that I want this thing to be split into a list of characters. We're going to pass that to the reducer. The reducer is going to take the string of characters and it's going to split them into an array, and the reducer is going to pass that array to our application state. And so now we would say that our application state consists of an array of characters like so. So this is, I know, very esoteric right now. You're probably thinking, Steven, what the heck is going on? What's with this splitting stuff? What's with this array? What are you talking about, guy? Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. But this is a very practical example that we're going to take right here, and we're going to code this up exactly in JS Playgrounds. We're going to see what the action looks like. We're going to see what the reducer looks like, and we're going to get some experience with the state object as well. So let's take a short break and then come back and code up this tiny little application inside of our browser.